Okay, good afternoon. It's now 12 p.m. on March 4th. So I will call the meeting of the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability to order. I'm Norma Hutcheson, Vega Chairperson, and with me today, well, first I should say due to COVID-19, the meeting is being held virtually by WebEx. But joining me today are board members Charles Nottingham, Melissa Tucker, Felice Smith, and Darrin Sobin. So together we constitute a quorum for this meeting. In fact, that's all of us. So since the meeting was first posted, there haven't been any changes to the agenda. So please take a few minutes to review the agenda, and then we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda for today.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to offer the motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we adopt the agenda for today's meeting. So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the agenda for today's meeting has been adopted. And next, I'd like for us to take a look at the minutes from the February 2021 meeting. And then we'll need a motion to adopt those, or we can have a discussion about any necessary changes.
I'll offer the motion to approve the minutes from the February 4th, 2021 meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. That was Director Felice Smith. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes. Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposition? Okay, then the minutes from the February 4th, 2021 meeting have been adopted. So next we'll hear from our Office of Open Government, OOG Director Niquelle Allen will provide a report on behalf of that office, and she's also appearing virtually by WebEx. So Director Allen, please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I am Niquelle Allen, Director of Open Government, and I am pleased to present this report on the activities of the Office of Open Government, or OOG. Since the last board meeting, OOG has continued to fulfill its mission of ensuring that all persons receive full and complete information regarding the affairs of the district government and the actions of those who represent them. I'll start with Open Meetings Act and Freedom of Information Act advice. OOG has not issued any advisory opinion since the last board meeting. OOG continues to provide formal and informal advice regarding the operation of the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act during the public health emergency in writing, via email, and orally. Formal FOIA advice. OOG's legal staff and OGE's General Counsel, Rossi Raj, continue to provide Vega's pending FOIA requesters with a letter detailing the COVID-19 related changes to FOIA requirements and the impact of those changes on FOIA. Currently, all FOIA requests received by Vega's FOIA officer, Cherie DeBerry, on or after January 16, 2021, will be processed under the normal FOIA rules. However, if the request requires Vega staff to search for records located in Vega's physical office, our response to that FOIA request will not be due until 45 days after the public health emergency has concluded. The next item is informal OMA and FOIA advice. OOG continues to experience a high volume of requests for advice and assistance on open government matters. This is due to the pandemic and the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The office received 36 requests for Open Meetings Act advice. The office responded to 30 requests for FOIA advice, and the office responded to 24 requests for technical assistance with open-dc.gov since the last board meeting. I'll note that our IT specialist has been updating vega.dc.gov and open-dc.gov in consultation with OOG and OGE staff since the last board meeting. The next item is training and outreach. First, OMA guidance on DC charter school boards of trustees. On February 5th, I and OOG's legal staff met virtually with Latham and Watkins attorneys. This firm is counsel to a DC Public Charter School Board of Trustees. Specifically, we discussed whether the Board of Trustees may continue the consent vote procedure authorized for nonprofits under the District's Corporation Act. In our view, the process is essentially an electronic meeting that the public may not attend. And our position is that these meetings do violate the Open Meetings Act. I have taken the Board of Trustees position under advisement, and the OOG legal staff continues to research the issue. A resolution is forthcoming and may be the subject of a future advisory opinion. Next, the Sustained Energy Utility Advisory Board OMA training. Attorney Barton trained this public body on February 8th, 2021, and Attorney DeBerry assisted him by attending. Public Charter School Board of Trustees Open Meetings Act training. On February 10th, Attorney DeBerry presented OMA training to the board liaison for the Center City Public Charter School, and Chief Counsel Barton also attended that training and provided assistance. The DC Department of Homeland Security FOIA training. On February 24th, I conducted a FOIA training for Homeland Security, or HCMA's General Counsel, FOIA officers, executives, and staff. Approximately 40 participants attended. This training was timely. DC Act 24-2 was signed by the mayor on January 15, 2021, which designates HCMA as a law enforcement agency. It also established within HCMA a fusion center to receive and share sensitive law enforcement data. The Act also designates the fusion center as a law enforcement unit. So the training emphasized FOIA's law enforcement and privacy exemptions. HCMA also recently experienced an increase in FOIA requests along with other DC law enforcement agencies as a result of the January 6th insurrection and their ongoing investigations. This DC Act that I mentioned expires on April 14th. The council also passed a temporary version of the Act this past Tuesday, March 2nd. Next is the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner meeting. On March 1st, I, along with OOG's legal staff, met virtually with OCME's General Counsel to discuss the impact of the district's transparency laws as OME contemplates changes relating to its enabling legislation. Law and Economic Center webinar. On March 3rd, OOG staff attended the webinar First Amendment, Section 230 and Content Moderation. The center is an entity within George Mason University's Antonin Scalia School of Law. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act provides companies broad protections from lawsuits involving the content of third parties' posts on their platform. Discussed were content moderation decisions surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic and the removal of former President Trump from Twitter and Facebook. The next item is the litigation and legislative update. Litigation, OOG is monitoring FOIA-related cases in DC Superior Court. This agency was not a party to either of the lawsuits. I am providing this information for the board's awareness of litigation that may impact the operation and interpretation of DC FOIA law. So the first item is the Tpm Lawsuit update. This is the update on the FOIA case filed against the District of Columbia on July 13, 2020 by Terrace, Pravick, and Millen. The FOIA lawsuit alleges that the District of Columbia government failed to produce and post online various budget-related documents as required by FOIA. The complaint alleges that the Executive Office of the Mayor failed to produce documents related to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education of the District of Columbia. On January 29th, the parties filed supplemental briefings in support of their respective motions to dismiss. On February 12th, the court issued an order that denied the district government's motion to dismiss, which contended that the documents were deliberative and DC FOIA does not make them public information, that TPM served the FOIA request on the wrong agency, that if DC FOIA makes this document public information, it is invalid because it violates the separation of powers in the DC government. The documents are protected by executive privilege. The court lacks the power to compel the district to produce these documents to its website, TPM lacked standing to request the court to do so. The court found that the documents were not deliberative because they reflected the policy of the agency rather than the personal opinions of a writer. The court also found that TPM reasonably requested documents that do not require a written request. Therefore, they satisfy the plausibility requirement of serving its FOIA request on the correct agency. And the FOIA request did not implicate the counsel or empower the counsel to participate in initial executive deliberations, so there was no separation of power issue. Remember that the DC Council filed a brief in the proceeding supporting the plaintiff's position and rebutting the district defendant's separation of powers argument. The power of the budget is a mixed power between the mayor and the council, and therefore does not fall within the executive privilege. DC FOIA statutory history provides for judicial review for failure to publish the documents online, and TPM was harmed and has standing to sue because they were unable to monitor compliance with the past injunction. Also in this matter, on February 26th, the district filed its answer to the complaint. The district's answer restates as defenses the ground stated in its motion to dismiss. March 19th is the scheduling conference hearing. Copies of the court's order and the district's answer are in Dropbox, and OOG will continue to monitor this matter. The next lawsuit is a stop and frisk FOIA lawsuit. On February 16th, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, filed a lawsuit against the District of Columbia seeking records concerning stop and frisk by the Metropolitan Police Department, or MPD. MPD is required to retain stop and frisk statistics pursuant to the Near Engagement Archives Results Act. The complaint seeks declaratory and injunctive relief to compel the district to provide these documents. On March 3rd, the district filed the defendant's opposition to plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction, and the district contends that since MPD has released some of the requested data through June 2020, the ACLU is unlikely to succeed on the merits and is not irreparably harmed. May 5th is the initial scheduling conference before Honorable Judge William Jackson. A copy of the complaint is in your Dropbox, and OOG will continue to monitor this matter as well. The next item is legislation. The DC Council acted this week to authorize the extension of the public health emergency. The changes to certain Open Meetings Act and FOIA laws will remain in effect during the public health emergency. So on March 2nd, the Council passed Bill 24-0139, the Coronavirus Support Emergency Amendment Act of 2021. The mayor extends the mayor's authority to declare a public health emergency through May 20th, 2021. It contains most of the provisions of DC Law 23-130, the Coronavirus Support Temporary Amendment Act of 2020, which is set to expire on March 31st. Concerning government transparency, the emergency law maintains the provisions from the Temporary Act that 1, requires all public body meetings to be held remotely, 2, waives the physical posting of public meeting notice, and 3, tolls the time frame for publishing public meeting records. It does not alter the current requirements to respond to FOIA requests. This measure also extends the time for the mayor to submit the district's budget to April 22nd, 2021, in anticipation of receiving federal COVID relief funds. The district also passed on first reading a corresponding temporary measure, Bill 24-0140, the Coronavirus Support Temporary Amendment Act of 2021. The last item is administrative matters, and we only have one of those. The attorney advisor and trial attorney vacancies. The OOG attorney advisor position was reposted on Monday, March 1st, and closes on March 31st. The OOG will also conduct interviews for the trial attorney vacancy beginning next Monday, March 8th. This concludes the Office of Open Government's March 4th, 2021 report. I'm welcome to answer any questions you may have, and thank you.
Thank you, Director Allen. Are there any questions for Director Allen?
I have a quick question about the trial attorney position. Is it anticipated, because the way the statute is written, as I recall, OOG's authority to go into court is limited to forcing a currently closed meeting to be opened. And so is that the trial attorney's role to do that when and if that occurs?
Yes, that's right. As you may recall, in the past, when the one lawsuit the office was filed, outside counsel was needed. It was provided on a pro bono basis, but if you rank up the cost, it was very expensive. So having an attorney have the capability to bring the case was what we were looking at, so we didn't have to go externally. But that won't be that person's only role. They'll essentially also be advising the same as the other attorneys in OOG. But if there's an OMA case, that person would be the one responsible for bringing it in court. So we hope, and tandem to that, to get that paralegal position so that the attorney will have a fact witness in that case, because there is a conflict of interest for the attorneys to serve as fact witnesses. So we're just trying to clean that up with the structure. So that's, in a nutshell, why we're seeking the trial attorney and the paralegal in FY22.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
We hope
for
to
Ms.
not bring any cases. We hope everyone's compliant. We never have to go there, but we must be prepared. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Allen? Director Allen. Okay, well, next we'll hear a report from the Office of Government Ethics, also by WebEx. Director Ford is appearing on behalf of the office. Director Ford.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Hutcheson and members of the board. I am Rochelle Ford, the Director of Government Ethics, and I am pleased to report on the activities of our office since the board last met. First, I will provide an overview regarding an update on the status of our operations with respect to our investigations. The information reported today regarding OGE's cases will not reflect any status changes that may occur as a result of any actions taken by the board during today's meeting. We have 53 open cases. Currently, 2 of those are formal investigations. We have no matters that are pending as undocketed. Just as a reminder, or for public, those are matters that come in and are still being reviewed as complaints. We have 27 matters that are closed pending collection, 4 matters that are stayed pending the Office of Attorney General False Claims Act investigations, and 9 matters stayed pending OIG investigations, for a grand total of 20 matters that are stayed or closed pending collection. We still have 24 matters that are closed pending collection that are regulatory, and we are working as part of the collections unit that we have created within the office. We are beginning to pursue those matters this quarter. So looking across time, we have the same amount of cases open and stayed as we did last month, 53 open and 12 matters stayed. And in January, we had 49 matters open and 12 matters stayed. The number of open investigations for this month includes 14 new matters that were initiated since the board last met. And the team resolved 6 preliminary investigations since the board last met. Next, with respect to training and outreach, these are the trainings that staff attended for professional development. During the month of February, Auditor Tajuba completed the following trainings offered by DCHR. Classes related to Excel and getting to know macros, cultivating cross-functional team collaboration, Excel Office 365, managing data, and the strategy analysis knowledge area. Attorney Cooks completed 3 strategies for civil litigation success, presented by Nexus, and General Counsel Raj completed diversity and inclusion in the legal workplace and trauma-informed lawyering strategies and best practices, both from the Online Practicing Law Institute. On March 2nd of this year, I attended a roundtable discussion presented by the Defense Industry and Government Ethics Initiative on ethics and compliance in the new working environment. It would feature presenters from from Microsoft and several government entities and stakeholders, and we discussed new methods for training and discussing ethics, given how many employees are working remotely. So it was a very productive training. Next, the training is conducted by staff. Since the last board meeting, OGE attorneys conducted 8 total trainings, including 1 monthly ethics training, a DCHR in-school youth leadership seminar training, a donations management training paired with Serve DC. There were 4 FDS, that's financial disclosure statement trainings, given the upcoming filing season. And we hosted our virtual ethics forum this month. And the event featured a guest presenter who discussed unlocking the positive value of ethics. The presenter was Marcy Maslov, and she's an ethics and business consultant who began her career as an auditor and created a company in which she goes around. She encourages organizations on how to develop ethical culture. So it was very helpful. It was well received. It was really interactive. There were hypotheticals, and there was a game, and people got quite competitive. And there was a really interesting discussion, and the presentation was well received by the counselors in attendance, and we received positive feedback overall. In terms of online training, 105 employees took OGE's monthly online training. At the oversight hearing, we noted that last year, 1,174 employees took the training online compared to about 400, a little over 400 the year before. So employees are really beginning to access the online system dramatically, which makes sense given that people are working remotely, but we're glad to see that more people are taking ethics training. Next, with respect to advisory opinions, informal advice. First, informal advice, OGE attorneys responded to approximately 50 requests for informal ethics guidance, which is 12 more than the 38 that the office reported at the last meeting. This number does not include responses that we provided to questions regarding the lobbyist and FDS e-filing systems. OGE has not issued any advisory opinions since the last meeting. However, we have drafted an advisory opinion on seeking and negotiating employment, and we are completing the process for office review for publication and intend to issue it shortly. Next, with respect to legislative updates, as Director Allen has mentioned, last Friday, February 26th, Director Allen, Chair Hutcheson, and I testified before the DC Council's Committee on Human Services, which is chaired by Council Member Brianna Doe. A link of the recording was sent to all board members, and we can provide it again if needed. It was a productive and interesting conversation. We are excited about working with the council member in the future. She has asked us to update and revise the comprehensive code of conduct in an effort to begin to initiate some ethics reform within the district. So we are really looking forward to that. Our testimony and agency responses will be added to the BEGA website in an effort to provide more transparency about agency operations and data. So I'll get to this later, but we initiated a project to try to provide the transparency about our processes that the public should have access to, especially given our mission. And so we've been working to improve the website. I'll come to that. Next, to discuss ethics reform more specifically, in light of the council members' request that we update and revise the Comprehensive Code of Conduct, or CCC, OG's attorneys met with the general counsel of the Campaign Legal Center this morning to discuss potential ethics reform in the district. The Campaign Legal Center is a nonprofit entity that was created in 2002, and they advocate for ethics reform at the state and national level and work with ethics commissions or entities, and also litigate or file ethics complaints or defend ethics legislation as need be. They have recently worked with the St. Louis Ethics Commission and the San Francisco Ethics Commission on strengthening their ethics legislation and supporting their ethics reform. And so we hope to begin to initiate a regular process of working with them as well to, we have some priorities in mind, but to also get a comparative analysis of what is happening nationally with respect to priorities for strengthening ethics laws. So really looking forward to this opportunity and excited about that. And so we'll provide further information regarding our efforts to move forward with the CLC, but we are, I think it'll be a productive opportunity for the agency. Our oversight responses to the committee's questions regarding our performance are uploaded to the Dropbox for your review. Next, with respect to administrative matters, OGE is still seeking a new attorney advisor who is being brought into the office to help to the growing caseloads. And we plan to repost this position next week more broadly than we posted it, so that we can receive a broader array of candidates. We're looking for people who have some ethics experience potentially, so they can come in and be able to work with the staff right away. Next, with respect to applications, OGE under its statute is required to publish a best practices report as well as quarterly complaint reports. And so at our oversight hearing, we took the opportunity to talk with the council member about the fact that we have not issued our best practices report, given that we had vacancies that made it difficult to publish the reports at that time. Now that we are about to fill you're about to fill the senior attorney position with the board, we would like to issue a mid-year report. And I think that this is a good opportunity to put out, to remind people of the purpose of the CCC and explain how we've changed it, because I think that will give some insights into sort of, trends in ethics reform, and then also to suggest some priorities as well. And we would then pick up with our our obligation to file the report at the end of the year. We also advised the council member that we last published our quarterly report for the first quarter of fiscal year 20, which covers the time period of October 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. We are delayed in publishing the other reports. In October of 2019, as you may recall, we adopted a new case intake and docketing method for incoming complaints, and that led to a lot of complaints being initiated, of course, at one time. And so we have been delayed due to the demands of maintaining the remote agency operations during the public health crisis, staff vacancies, and transitions, having new employees in, and then the revised system. But we intend to publish all of our quarterly reports and become up to date and publish those reports in a revised format that will include more data regarding the number of investigations that were initiated from complaints received quarterly. The goal here is to make the report more readable. And so I first looked at peer agencies and looked at their reporting. And one thing I realized that our data or our reporting lacks is visual information so that people can have an understanding of what we received. And so I looked at the Office of Human Rights, I looked at the Office of Police Complaints, and then I also looked at performance data and looked at how that was reported. And then I next looked at what of course, our statute requires in our past reports, and I think it would be helpful to break out reports that have already been pending so that we know what was pending at the beginning of any given quarter, but then also to see what's coming in more clearly. And we'd like to provide clearer data on the average age of cases and how long it's taking us to complete those matters. We've seen an uptick in cases coming in and over the past year, and then things began to slow down, of course, because people were working at home. So it may be an anomaly, but the caseload is increasing, I think, meaningfully, if not significantly, over the past few years. So we will provide some examples, but we will get those reports up before the next meeting. Next, we've also been working on the website. We have created a website improvement working group, which includes our IT attorney, Mr. Bridges, and supervisory attorney, Ashley Cooks. And we met last month to identify immediate website changes that we hope will make the site easier to navigate and will allow employees and the public to find information more easily. And so I provided a sample screenshot so that you could see, we just made it clear so that people could easily access the enforcement, advice and training, lobbying, and financial disclosure components of the agency pretty clearly. And then we intend to now go through and have our team index the advisory opinions and dispositions that are on there so that they're easier to find, and so that people can find information on how, on what a precedent looks like with respect to gifts or conflicts or whatever the issue is. We also intend to provide a more narrative discussion of our complaint process. So we, of course, as you all know, have an obligation to conduct our work in a way that protects the rights and reputations of employees. And so, the contents of our investigative files remain confidential, but we'd like to provide more transparency in the same way as we'd like to with the reports about how we process those complaints and what the nature, the trends in those complaints are. So that's something that we are also working on, and we're going to add an Ask the Director link and make some other changes to just make the system overall, or rather the website overall, more user-friendly and to provide more information. Our interns have joined our agency and are off to a good start. They will be working on the project to index the dispositions and advisory opinions for both OG and the OGE. And they are also involved in doing research in connection with our website improvements by reviewing sort of reviewing benchmark jurisdictions websites. We look to other commissions, say in Chicago or San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, as well as certain state commissions to see how they're providing their information and their data, and to try to identify some ways that would, be innovative or would be helpful for the district or would work here. So they are helping in that way by doing research. So they're off to a good start. Next, financial disclosure and lobbyist matters. First, lobbying registration and reporting. OGE received 18 new registrations, including new renewals and terminations in the past month. And based upon audits of our fiscal year 20 filings, OG has begun to initiate enforcement proceedings against lobbyists who filed late registrations or reports. It's not a large number of lobbyists involved. Next, with respect to financial disclosure, on Monday, February 8th, the FBS team sent out the annual agency head memo to district agency heads, of course, and the council, and to ANC commissioners, and officially launched the 2021 financial disclosure filing season. In subsequent days, Attorney Stuart Mitchell conducted 4 ethics counselor trainings on financial disclosure. The FDS team has created a job aid that will provide a step-by-step analysis that ethics counselors can use in designating employees as filers, and so that they can have consistent records and be able to, explain their justification in case there's an appeal by an employee about the designation. In total, the trainings that Attorney Stuart Mitchell conducted had 79 participants. The team has been collecting ethics filer lists, which will do on March 1st, and is working with Octo to get ready to prepare those filers for e-filing this season. The team is also working. We have had 2 meetings and are about to have another on revising the forms on the questions for financial disclosure in response to feedback that we received last year from filers. And we intend to publish that form on April 1st. Last month, OGE imposed penalties on 181 public and confidential filers who are district employees. We will also impose penalties on an additional group of non-filers before the end of the quarter. And lastly, in preparation for 2021 and future filings, OGE and Octo are developing a pilot program to allow confidential filers to use an e-filing system as well. The feature would allow them to have the same access as a public filer, but only their agency's leadership team and ethics counselors would have access to those filings. So just provide it would cut down on inefficiency and allow all of us to send out the same notices to sort of avoid the confusion from receiving so many different communications. At oversight last year, chairman or then chairman, chairman of our committee, Charles Allen, gave us feedback that he felt like or rather believed that we should streamline our communication because it was overwhelming. And so we took that advice to heart and are looking for ways to provide, I would say mass notification and giving people similar access and ease of use. And also that's a reflection of all of us working remotely. Program specialist COSIC has been in contact with different agencies who have expressed an interest in taking part in our pilot program. We have been mindful of problems that can develop if you launch a product or a system too early. And so we are only offering e-filing for this pilot program this season, even though we'll be capable. We're only offering it to a handful of agencies with a small number of filers to see how it works before we roll it out across the whole district. But if we are able to launch it, we will be allowing 2,000 or so additional filers to be able to access the system, which would be, I think, an excellent use and would really show the enhancements that we've been able to have implemented by working with Opto this year. Let's see. Thank you. This concludes the report of the Office of Government Ethics for March 4th, 2021. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Director Ford. That was great. Very informative. Unfortunately, I missed our oversight hearing. I was dealing with my mom and trying to get her the vaccine. Can you give us any highlights for those that missed it? And apologies if it was just.
Oh no, I'm happy to give you her highlights. We actually had an opportunity to have pretty good notes and coverage. So if you'll bear with me as I go along, I did review this in advance because I wanted to get some highlights. So the council member asked us about our tracking system for ethics complaints, especially that was given. We had a roundtable regarding our intake process. So we took the time to explain to her the changes that we made to the system and how the case management system works. And so we also explained to her that we were able to determine that last year it took the team about 169 days on average to resolve cases, which actually is pretty good given that there's a pandemic which slowed things down dramatically. We're currently with our cases pending open at a matter of an average of 204 days open. So, but that there was a hold on cases at one point because of the pandemic. And once we develop policies for remote or better policies for remote investigations, we began to, start to open up and move on and move forward with cases. So I expect things to continue moving. They asked us about our relationship with the Office of Human Rights and OAG, and we talked about how after the hearing or the oversight hearing last year, this was a question that the chairman asked us, and even actually before the hearing, we'd already reached out to the Office of Human Rights, and so we actually had a cross-training, or rather initiating a cross-training. So we met with them, our GC, then acting GC, Ashley Cooks, and I met with their GC and some of their staff, and we talked about the type of work that we do, the type of trainings that we do, and types of matters that we could refer to each other. That meeting occurred on January 27th. We had scheduled a meeting to occur early in March, but as we all know, the pandemic occurred, and so that session was canceled. But the Office of Human Rights, as I explained then, also took part as panelists along with OIG and DCHR on the investigative processes within each of their offices and how we have continued to investigate during the pandemic. So there was a presentation. If you didn't see it at Ethics Week, you can actually see the presentation. It's on our or it's online. It's really helpful to see how we investigate different but very similar matters related to employee conduct, and talks about the processes that we use. And then we talked about our work with OAG, and that we refer matters to them, usually involving matters of residency fraud, and that we request guidance from their Office of Legal Counsel. We have been working with their community engagement team to create a virtual academy for ANC commissioners, which were going to be quarterly opportunities to essentially have an open house to discuss common legal issues and ethics issues that ANC commissioners might face. That's part of our strategic plan in terms of education, which is to provide better ethics guidance to the 300 citizens who volunteer to meet and support the district's efforts every day. So we were going to do that, but we were informed that OGE would not be able to participate in the virtual academies this year. So we're going to go back and reconceive that and still offer those options to ANC commissioners. And then lastly, OAG has asked this office to take part in their regular employee onboarding, but that collaboration's been delayed due to the pandemic. And let's see, we were asked about, again, the tracking, not saying again, about our tracking system for advice, given, again, that she's new with our agency. So we explained to her how we receive advice, and that the position that we promoted Attorney Cooks to oversees the advice request. And so we've been able to really ensure that those requests are handled very efficiently. And we've also created, besides saving all of our advice by topic so that we can retrieve it and search it, we've also created an inbox for all advice that we send out that we all CC, so that we can see each other's advice in real time in one space. So we're really excited about that. We've also initiated Advice Tea Time, where we get together and talk about interesting or novel questions. Sometimes those questions have led us to call, the federal OGE or represent a hypothetical at an ethics lunch. So I think it's been really productive in ensuring that we have both consistency of advice and customer service. And we explained that we're also looking to provide a database. We were at one point considering buying one, but we believe the price it's something that would be better to create internally, because we wanted to be able to grow organically with our platforms that we use. And so the goal here is to be able to better code request by topic, because often a request will have more than one topic. Someone has a question about a gift, and maybe there's a potential question for a conflict. Or someone calls and they say, I have 6 questions. Because they've been holding up for the week and they finally got to you, or for the month. And so we want to be able to better code that advice and make it, more easily searchable, and to be able to extract more data from the questions that we receive. Let's see, they also asked about Ethics Week, and I just talked about that. We just explained how we expanded Ethics Day to a week this year. Attorney Cooks led the effort of turning this effort with the Office of Open Government, because it's ethics in a virtual world, and government transparency and open government as well. So both offices provided presentations, 12 presentations over the course of the week, including me, the staff, explained our investigations. We provided substantive topics, and we also provided an opportunity for attendees to receive CLEs. There was a presentation on legal ethics as well. It was really well attended. I think there were about 1,300 participants. We received very positive feedback on it. And all of that information is available on the website. And so we intend to probably, I imagine we'll hold a virtual forum again, although it is nice to get together in the office. We have to find some way to honor that tradition as well. See, they asked about our budget enhancement request, and we emphatically, explained that although the Berry building is, it's great to be in a historic building, and it's in a very convenient location, that the space is no longer workable, especially given public health concerns. And so we have outgrown the space. It is the space that board member Sobin initiated the office in with just a few employees. And now we are asking 15 people to work in that space, and we only have one coverage. We can't do investigations, or it slows down our work. So we have identified space at Taft Street, and hope to pursue that space soon. So we discussed that with the councilman. She was definitely not helping us, I think. So that Director Allen, do you want to provide anything with respect to that?
You guys are making me feel old. I remember when
Don't feel old. Don't feel old. It's really
you
interesting.
referred to 441 as a historic building, and I remember when it was built to replace
It's historic
the
because
Wilson
of its name now. That's why. Let's see. I'm getting to the end here. I won't go on too long. I'm sorry. I just have good notes. I just figured I'd just go through and read them. Let's see.
Yeah, that was great.
And then they asked about the designation of a public information officer, as we've been asked about time and time. I shouldn't say previously, excuse me. And so both offices explained that the director primarily handles external communications. We had identified a public information officer training that we were going to send attorney Cooks to, and it was in March and it was canceled because of the pandemic, and they have not rescheduled. It's put on by SIGI, which is the group that provides Inspector General training. But we still intend to pursue providing a role for someone in the office to specifically be tasked with managing our social media websites, which I know Director Allen does now, but I'm sure she could use assistance with that function, as well as working with our outreach effort. So that's something that we are working to move forward on. Let's see, they asked about spending pressures, and we mentioned looking to procure a training platform because we have, I always say 35,000, but I actually looked and it's 45,000. I don't have the exact number, workers who work for the district or boards or commissions. We are trying to allow people to access that online training because we see people are interested from anywhere to one secure platform. We can't use the one that DCHR has because of privacy concerns with respect to personal data. And so we're going to need to create our own platform. Last year, former Councilmember Grosso introduced a bill that would have required mandatory ethics training for all employees. And so given that that may be the future, we would like to procure a platform. And so we did some research into the market, and the market is saturated. And so we intend to initiate an RFP to procure a platform. And so we advised her of that. And then we also advised her that the agency is very leanly staffed. We have, 3 teams of attorneys who and investigators who do all of the investigations for all that may come in, and complaints are increasing. And we have small teams that provide trainings to public bodies and or to any agency upon request, as well as handling regular trainings. And of course, we provide advice and education, and that we explain that if there's a vacancy or an employee absence or an illness or even a significant office project, if we all work on an investigation that's a priority and time sensitive, that means that rest of the agency abilities to meet its mission is impacted. And so we did receive funding for an additional attorney, which we are excited about. But we're having but we think that given the job duties that we're asking the attorneys to perform, that we should reevaluate and reclassify the positions. Last year in May, I met with the head of classification at DCHR and provided her with position descriptions at the agency. And she suggested that several of the positions should be reclassified because at that time we were concerned about retention and being competitive. And so it's given that our staff is so small, it's hard for us to hire someone who's very junior and then remotely train them at this time. We need someone with a little bit of experience. And we want someone with the knowledge and skills that we need to be able to contribute sooner. And so we intend to go ahead and review. We're going to create a little committee and review and revise the position descriptions under DCHR's guidance, of course, to attract a broader pool of experienced applicants who have some background in open government or ethics or investigations. So we talked about that. And then the trends that we see, as I've mentioned, we have seen an uptick, but that was from the beginning of the year. And I mentioned that we turned those matters that hadn't been docketed, we put them all, gave them all docket numbers, and then we converted a lot of them just out of the abundance of caution to go ahead and move through them very quickly, or say quickly, but to make sure that they were all looked at thoroughly. Initially, I was so much concerned, I thought the data was off, but just even though there was a high amount the first quarter there, comparatively, we received more complaints. And then there was a slowdown that was a pretty sharp drop. And then things have picked up again. Remember that a complaint, the things on the national stage, people sometimes think that we have an ability to regulate that. And so, a complaint about that is something that's not within our jurisdiction, but that would be counted, for example. So the numbers have gone up for a variety of reasons, but it may be an anomaly. So let's see, that was the trends. And then there was a question, I talked already about transparency, and that was in response to a question that the council member had about whether or not we have if our policies and formal process for conducting our investigations is available clearly on our website. And so one thing we did right away in response to that was at least move the PowerPoint that gives the overview of our investigative process right on our enforcement tab so people can see that. The intent is, though, to provide a narrative that explains to people in plain English that it's accessible, but also to provide a graphic with a flow chart so that people can see what our process looks like. That we have your sort of standard process for workplace related investigations, and we want to set forth what our policies are in terms of being impartial, and how we look at evidence, and then also just how we close cases and inform complainants about their cases as well. So we have a team set up to work on that, and we have been working with the case intake system, a policy that was revised last year by the former director. We've been breaking that down and breaking that out. And so what we're going to do is add an intake role, clerk role to the customer support specialist position, because we'd like to have more uniformity in data and in our system. One of the reasons why the reports are delayed is because the system is a really excellent system and can do a lot, but it's, I think there's no technical term, it's bloated. And so, there are 40 inputs that relate to everything from someone's eye color to height. And we don't need to collect that much data. And so we've been working with CMTS, talking with them about streamlining that, and then having an intake complaint clerk, after we receive a complaint, decide to convert it to an investigation, ensure that we have uniform coding of those complaints so that we can pull our reports more easily. So all of those things are related to give you, I guess, some insights into what's going on with case intake, both policy and process and improvements. And then they asked about the lobbyist system, when we explain that it's working with minimal technical issues. And we're at the point now where we're working to enhance the system. We did meet with stakeholders earlier this year. We met with a small group of lobbyists and other stakeholders, and talked about the system and how it's working, got some feedback, and learned that it's difficult to add who the official is that they are meeting with, and maybe ask for some different search functions. And so we're going to try to work with Octo to address those. But things are working well with the lobbyist system. And then we were asked about our legislative priorities with respect to the CCC. And as I've already explained, that she asked us to go ahead and move forward and update it. She asked about the application of the district's code of conduct to ANCs, and as Director Sobin former Director Sobin wrote in an advisory opinion in 2017, and as the council made clear, ANC commissioners are subject to the code of conduct, and and to the provisions of the district personnel manual as public officials. So we clarified that all for the record. We were asked about whether or not we believe a council member should abstain or recuse themselves from voting in matters involving their own alleged misconduct or disciplinary actions. This reflected the complaint filed by Mr. Alan Raw regarding former council members Evan's ability to vote on a matter regarding his own discipline. And just as we explained in the opinion, we understood that bodies have the right to self-police, but ultimately this seemed to be a question for the council. And I think she agreed with that, it's fair to say. And then I'm getting there lastly, we talked about the best practices report. And I think that covered it. Director Allen, would you like to provide any other insights?
I guess from the agency standpoint, we've covered everything. The one thing that we brought to council members' attention regarding salaries and employees was that we are having to compete with the federal government right now because it's a new administration for these attorney positions. So, we will be looking and requesting probably at the next budget hearing to make sure that our salaries are comport with the federal government, and also putting in line that our office situation is not the best, and that could have something to do with our ability to attract legal talent. So we're hoping that she'll be able to rectify those situations with some increases to our budget. And I'll just add on the substantive front from Office of Open Government, she has a background in Foia and was a former ANC commissioner, so she's familiar with a lot of the things that we handle, and her questions were around that. And my presentation focused on the pandemic, policing, and public schools as being the main focus for OOG, which I call referred to as the 3 Ps. And we focus on that in FY20 and FY21 to present. So I put my testimony as well as the questions for the agency, and the recording is on open-dc.gov. And I also put it on Twitter. So all of our information is out there and transparent for the public to be able to hear and see.
Thank you guys for that comprehensive overview. I feel like I've sat through the oversight hearing. Much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Sorry. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Ms. Porter or Director Porter, Director Allen, before we move on? Okay, hearing none. The public was invited to submit comments by 11 a.m. today, so any comments that were submitted will be received and will be published with the minutes from this meeting. Okay. The next item on our agenda is an executive session, a closed session. So we are going to move to closed session to discuss ongoing confidential investigations pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B14, to consult with an attorney to obtain legal advice and to preserve the attorney-client privilege between an attorney and a public body, pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B4A, to discuss personnel matters including the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance, evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees, employees, or officials pursuant to DC Official Code Section 2-575B10, to deliberate on a decision in which the Ethics Board will exercise quasi-judicial functions pursuant to DC Official Code Section 575B13, and to discuss contract negotiation strategies pursuant to DC Official Code Section 5-57B2. So may I have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved in second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Need one more aye.
Aye.
Okay. It's been moved, any opposition? Okay, the time is now 1:03 and we are going to go into executive session. Thank you.
Board Member Tucker?
I'm here.
You're still in the public session. You have to go to the executive session.
I thought that I was. All right. Sorry, I must have clicked on the wrong thing. I'll try now.
Okay.
Okay. Still have, there's a quorum. We're just not all here, but I don't think we need everyone. We do have a quorum. And so the time is now 1:57 PM and we're back on the record. We have no matters to report out. This concludes the meeting of the Board of Government Accountability for March 4th, 2021. The next meeting will also be conducted remotely via WebEx on April 1st, 2021. Everybody have a great weekend and a great month. Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.